So in fiction, it's very common for an author to have a reading of their work. So they'll read a chapter or an excerpt, and that's a really, really popular way that fiction authors get the word out. Most of their launch activities actually have to do with readings. We get to know authors through the readings. And as I have one foot in fiction and one foot in nonfiction, it occurred to me that our nonfiction authors were not getting this opportunity, so I decided to create the opportunity. It's on Monday nights because back in the day when I started writing, I was a playwright, and we used to have Monday night readings at the Playwright Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So it's in honor of that formative experience of mine. Here's how this works. First, we will talk to one of our authors joining us tonight, Gena Cox and Sophie Wade, who both write about what I feel is not just the future of work, but the state of work and how we can do better. And they come at it from different perspectives. Gena Cox is an alum of Top 3 Book Workshop, and Sophie Wade is part of our Top 3 Author Club. So we're really honored to have these authors who have books coming out this year, Sophie in May and Gena in October. How it works is we'll do a little chat with each of them, and then they'll each read an excerpt from their book, and then we'll have a little conversation. Because Gena and Sophie also talk about similar things, if we have time, we'll get a conversation going about work and the state of things and their opinions about that. One thing I want to point out is that in anything I do, we have one golden rule, which is we keep things positive and we do not provide constructive criticism here in this space. So we love to hear positive feedback, just not any constructive feedback. Please, if something resonates with you, please write it in the chat. If you see if a line speaks to you, a moment speaks to you, please contribute to that. We do save the chat for the authors, and it's a really special thing for them to have. So as I usually happens, people roll in for the first 5 to 6 minutes, but we're going to get started. We end promptly at 8 p.m. Before we introduce Gena, I just want to remind you that we have Monday night readings on the first Monday of the month. So our next one is, Laura, help me out.
March 7th.
7th. Okay, our next one is March 7th. And that will be 2 or 3 authors from our community. So we encourage you to mark your calendar for that. It's always a free event and always open to the public. Okay, Laura, I'm going to have you introduce Gena for us.
I would be thrilled to introduce Gena. Gena Cox is an organizational psychologist, executive coach, speaker, and author. For over 20 years, Gena has advised top-level leaders of Fortune 500 and global companies to build and lead inclusive workplace cultures. She is on a mission to help make workplaces welcoming and human-centered places where all employees can thrive. Gena is active in the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology and serves on advisory boards at the University of South Florida and the University of Tampa. She contributes to national publications, including Harvard Business Review, and holds a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology. When not working, she loves to read, explore the great outdoors on her darling bicycle, I added that, Gena, and travel to places where she can pretend to be a local. Gena's book, Leading Inclusion, Drive Change Your Employees Can See and Feel, is available for pre-order now. I'll put the link in the chat, and arrives everywhere fine books are sold on October 11th. Connect with her at her website, which I'll put in the chat. AJ?
Awesome. Laura always takes it a little artistic license with the bios, so fair warning on that. Always positive. Hey, Gena.
Hello, Miss AJ.
I'm so excited to see the evolution of this book, and I do want to point out, everybody, that you're going to hear an excerpt that's a work in progress. So keep that in mind. Gena is still in the process here. Gena, as we do, for whom did you write this book that you were presenting today?
Yes, well, AJ, first of all, thank you for having me tonight. It's quite an honor. I am writing a book for business leaders who sincerely want to build inclusive work cultures. And they believe that hiring more people from traditionally disadvantaged groups is the answer. What they don't realize is that they are the key to building inclusive organizations.
So would you say that is your core message to readers?
I would say that my core message to leaders is that when they read this book, they're going to have the clarity and the confidence to lead the building of these inclusive organizations in a way that employees can actually see and feel it.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Gena, let's set up this excerpt from Leading Inclusion. It's part of chapter 1, yes?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. Because it's part of chapter 1, we don't have a lot of setup to do, but I'm really excited about this excerpt because I feel that it is an example of storytelling and message woven together in a really interesting way. And I think it also shows your unique perspective and spirit. So I'm excited. Everybody, we're going to let Gena read, and then after that, we will have a short discussion. All right, here you go, Gena.
All right. When George Floyd was murdered in May 2020, I went into a tailspin. Co-workers who previously had said very little to me were now asking me many questions about race. At first, I was annoyed. Why did it take the death of George Floyd for me to become a worthy conversation partner? I wondered. On June 19, 1865, the last enslaved Africans in the United States learned that they had been emancipated. So Black Americans celebrate Juneteenth on June 19th each year to commemorate this highly significant historical event. So I stopped in my tracks when, in June 2020, I heard several CEOs say, I don't know anything about Juneteenth. I don't know what to say or do about Juneteenth. Should I celebrate it in my company or not? How should I celebrate it? And so on. And that was my aha moment. I realized that CEOs and employees did not know how to respond at work when race-related issues surfaced in the wider society. But why not? I agree with Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, that being a learn-it-all is better than being a know-it-all. And still, in my more than 20 years of advising executive leaders, I have seldom heard an executive say they didn't have the answer. This time was different. A pandemic was raging, social injustices were fomenting, and the mood in the country was darkening. The uncertainty that I was hearing in leaders' voices was actually a good sign, a sign of self-awareness and necessary vulnerability. Because leaders were, I think, for the first time, publicly acknowledging their unfamiliarity with the experiences of color in the United States. And they seemed to realize that the same old rules of avoidance and silence would not be sufficient for this new day. According to the United States Census, the overall US population is about 76% white and 13% Black. And data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that about 86% of chief executives in that US labor force are white. 86%. And only about 6% are Black. It is therefore not surprising that a CEO might not know about Juneteenth. I say he because 71% of US chief executives are men. That's a whole other story. He would likely only know about Juneteenth if while growing up, he regularly interacted with people of color, or if he attended a school where the teachers were Black, or if he was lucky enough to be specifically taught African American history in school. Again, unlikely, since many school history books do not adequately cover the details of the Black experience. And although Black History Month celebrations are commonplace, they tend to highlight the same well-known leaders year after year, glossing over the ugly underbelly of slavery's impact that is more visible in the stories and lives of ordinary Black Americans. And as you will see later, persistent racial segregation is another reason why US chief executives are unlikely to have had regular interactions with people who do not look like them. I didn't grow up in the United States, but about a year after moving here, I officially became a Black American. It happened the day someone called me the N-word. You never forget your first time. I began to read voraciously about the Black experience in America because I saw that it would now be my experience. That study is how I learned about Juneteenth. Excuse me. However, it is only in 2020 that I came to understand why this uniquely evocative commemoration of American history is not well known outside the Black American community. I studied the lives of Black Americans because I was now a Black American too. I needed to catch up on all the things I would now experience for which I had no precedent in my previous life. I needed to know how to be. I needed to understand why it might not be in my best interest to walk alone at night in certain places. I needed to understand the significance of the new reactions I experienced when I walked into a room. I needed to know why it felt different when I moved around in New York versus when I moved around in Nashville, Tennessee, or why the security guard hung around while my friends and I played tennis on the courts in the complex where we lived. And why did my graduate school internship coordinator think that I would be satisfied with a referral to a clerical internship at Burger King, while my colleagues were referred for research assistant roles at the Naval Air War Center Training Systems Division? I didn't want to study war, but surely they knew I could do better than a clerical job. On my former island home, Barbados, people encouraged and celebrated me and told me regularly that I would excel. But when I came to the United States, it seemed as if a veil of low expectations dropped in front of me. Suddenly, I was being disregarded instead of encouraged. I was the same Gena, but the people around me only saw and responded to an avatar of Black woman. Was I still Gena? I wondered. If society's mirror consistently reflected a distorted, funhouse version of me. These experiences caused me to have very complex feelings, and I quickly became adept at handling those complex feelings. And by handling, I mean internalizing. I seldom spoke about the experiences or the feelings. Looking back, I should have found a more effective way of dealing with the racism trauma I was experiencing, but what would that better way have been? All paths to better were paved with high risk. I felt powerless to hold accountable those who perpetuated the racism, and while people more powerful than me might have been able to help, I had no reason to believe they were interested in even talking about these issues, never mind doing something to solve them. So I never spoke about my troubles at work, and leaders never noticed the problem. I'm not the only one. That pattern of ineffective avoidance and silence is one of the reasons why racism persists in the workplace. Racial discrimination and the resulting trauma are like a national blind spot, and yet whether you personally experienced it or not, racism exists in America. And the trauma it inflicts is omnipresent and very real for those who are on the receiving end. Healing from racism requires action and support, including from those who have not experienced it and don't understand it. It's necessary for all of us. I live in a lovely little town in Tampa Bay, Florida. I noticed many years ago that part of the town is somewhat cut off from the rest. This section has smaller homes, and some of the streets lack sidewalks. And a seemingly required railroad track runs through the town, dividing one section of that smaller house neighborhood from other larger house sections. The topography is low, and it's prone to settling water. One portion of the neighborhood is a large cul-de-sac for which there is only one point of entry and egress. And then there's a unique touch, which even most locals probably overlook. Many of the streets in the smaller house neighborhood are named after trees. For example, elm and maple. Those tree-named streets are in the Black neighborhood. When you cross the large street that separates this smaller house neighborhood from the larger house neighborhood, the street names change mysteriously. That naming convention, which can be seen in many other southern United States towns, was originally created as a convenient line of demarcation between white neighborhoods and Black neighborhoods. It was meant to help people avoid the Black neighborhood simply by avoiding the streets that had tree names. It's an elegant solution to a hateful, self-imposed, inelegant problem. Social segregation is such a well-oiled and pervasive tool that we don't notice it unless it negatively affects us. Many Americans have no friends of another race and may not realize how much the quality and experiences of day-to-day life in America can vary by race and ethnicity. But the fact is that many people of color experience racial harassment every day, often starting as early as grade school. This segregation powers misunderstanding, underestimation, and subordination of others. Black Americans are among the others. And this social segregation is a primary reason that a CEO might not know about Juneteenth or about the Black experience in general. If you don't have that connection, you might not know what Black employees experience every day in the company you lead. You might be unaware of the trauma and pain that Black employees carry, and you might not know that some of that trauma is exacted and exacerbated by managers within the company, within your company. You might not know that Black employees need your help so that we can function with ease rather than dread in your organization. Thinking more clearly about this issue blew my mind, but it also revealed how I could best contribute. I could take a cynical approach and say, how come you don't know these things, Mr. CEO? Or I could use my knowledge and experience to guide you to a more informed view of the Black American experience and how it affects our daily lives at work. I chose the second path. I want to guide your understanding of this unique leadership challenge, and I want to build your confidence about infusing inclusion into your business strategies, organizational culture, and leader behavior. As a business leader, you are accustomed to setting a vision, defining a strategy, and releasing the full power of employees' efforts to execute that vision. You do that every day with your product or your service offerings, with your marketing and your sales strategies, but you don't usually get involved with diversity and inclusion issues. You usually hand those off to your chief human resources officer or chief diversity officer, getting involved only to provide funding or political approval of their initiatives. But that approach will not get your organization where you want it to go when it comes to inclusion in what I call the future now work world. Much of the diversity and inclusion work done in organizations for the past 50 plus years or so since the passage of the Equal Employment Opportunity Laws has had only minimal impact relative to the amount of money that has been invested into those programs. This work is typically handled like a check the box obligation, focused more on administrative procedures than on enhancing employee experiences. So professionals responsible for managing D&I programs often have very little clout and few resources. Many are forced to function like the little Dutch boy, the one who stuck his finger into a hole in a dike to stop the water from entering his town. The villagers found him the next day and treated him like a hero. But he almost froze overnight while waiting for someone to see his contributions and come up with a permanent solution to the leaky dike. And unlike the Dutch story, in which the villagers eventually devised a solution, diversity and inclusion professionals seem to be perpetually stuck with their fingers in a hole that keeps growing larger, and their contributions are not highly valued. So you may have underestimated the scope of the race-based disparities that play out in larger society and in your organization too. These disparities result from a long history of slavery and a general intolerance for differences. But if you have never heard these facts discussed openly, or if they have not been part of your education, you might be oblivious to the scale of the problem. You might even believe your organization is already doing all it can or should do to address diversity and inclusion issues. Your CHRO and your CDO have likely implemented actions meant to minimize disparities based on race, gender, LGBTQ+ status, disability, age, and many other dimensions of difference. However, it is likely that those actions have not had much impact, at least not from the perspective of those whose opinions matter most. Employees. Research shows that white job applicants receive 30% more callbacks. White job applicants receive 36% more callbacks than Black applicants, and that hiring rates for Black Americans did not improve in the 25 years between 1990 and 2015. 25 years. People of color, especially Black women, continue to be underrepresented in leadership roles and persistently report less positive day-to-day experiences at work than their colleagues of other races and ethnicities. Asian Americans are the least likely to be promoted to leadership roles in technology jobs, even though they're highly represented in those jobs. This is a big deal. Your stakeholders are popping up with questions about these issues because they want your company to be a place where all employees can thrive. And they want to be on the right side of history when the dust settles. So as a leader, you must be informed about these issues, especially when they could be happening today in your organization. And if you delegate the solutions, you must maintain oversight. You need to lead the conversation to ensuring your organizational culture supports inclusion. Let's take that journey together.
Yay, Gena. Gena, come back off mute for me. That was great. Thank you so much for reading that. How did it feel to read that?
Oh, it was fun, but it was also, as you know, a kind of thing where I'm evaluating every word as I'm saying it, and anyone who's in this group who's a writer, an author, knows that you're never satisfied. So I'm critiquing myself even as I'm expressing something that I so strongly believe.
Well, welcome to authorship, Gena.
Yes.
Just never changes.
Yeah.
So everybody, I'm seeing a lot of people pre-ordering your book. If you would like to get Gena's book, you've got different options there in the chat for Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And hey, Laura, will you look it up on Bookshop for us too? So in case anybody wants an indie option, you can purchase there. So, and you also have a link to Gena's website. Gena, I want to ask you a couple of follow-up questions.
Sure.
One of the things I love so much about this book, and just learning about it as you worked on it in the early days in workshop, is again your approach to it. What I feel is, I mean, you're so compassionate and such a good listener, and I just feel that your approach is so interesting and welcoming. And why is it important for you to have that tone in the book?
Yeah, I mean, it really is important. First of all, it's who I am. This is how I am. And, when I
Cute.
put little snarky things in Instagram on Laura Stone's posts, it's because I have a great sense of humor and I don't get to use it enough, right? But this is how I am. And so I can't be any other way. And I want to be, and this is how I work with my clients all the time. So I need to do with this the same thing I do with my coaching and everything else. I need to let leaders know I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. You can do this. This stuff is really is difficult, but it probably isn't as difficult as you might think it is, and you shouldn't let that scare you away from it. But I also try to let them see that they have to be honest. Like, it isn't easy for me to say the things I just said, because number one, it's difficult to say it and experience it, but also it's because you always have this sense that I know that not everyone agrees with what I just said, right? Which is okay. But I do want leaders to think about these issues in terms of their obligations as leaders, regardless of anything else. And I have to take them along on that journey.
Right. So you and I have had a lot of talks about this, about how do you take someone on the journey versus force someone on the journey. And I think you're just so eloquent and beautiful in the way you approach things.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
Gena, what is the change you want to see in the world because this book is in it?
Yeah. I want that the workplace that my daughter and people who are younger than me go into will embrace them and let every person, even though I'm talking about this from the perspective of a Black woman, what I know that everybody in this room has something that they might sometimes think, holds them back or gets in the way or whatever, because we are all humans. But I would like all of us to be able to go into the workplace and know that people are going to they're going to give us a chance to get the opportunity. Then they're going to just evaluate us on our performance. And they'll give us the room to thrive and just be the best that they can be. And I really, really want leaders to realize that because we spend, so much of a disproportionate amount of our time in the workplace, we spend more time at work than anywhere else, that this is just a fantastic opportunity to sort of make America better, one employee at a time.
I love that, Gena. I'm so honored that you would come and read for us today. And we are so happy to have you in our wonderful author community. I'm going to move on to Sophie Wade, and I really hope, Gena, that we'll have a little time for the two of you to have a chat about it, since you're both in the same area, not the same exact topic. Thank you so much, Gena, for sharing your book with us today.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure. Hi, Mike Patterson. Not.
Yeah, Francesca's gonna have to that'll be the pseudonym, right? It'll be Mike Patterson on her book. Okay, so next we have Sophie Wade. Welcome, Sophie. Laura, I'm gonna let you introduce Sophie.
You bet. Sophie Wade is a speaker, author, and authority on future of work issues. She has a BA from Oxford University and an MBA from International Business School, INSEAD. Her second book, Empathy Works, The Key to Competitive Advantage in the New Era of Work, arrives everywhere fine books are sold May 3rd and is available for pre-order now. I'll put the link in the chat. She is founder and workforce innovation specialist at Flexel Network. Sophie's executive advisory work and transformative workshops, including a new one she's about to launch on LinkedIn, help companies future-proof their work environments and attract, engage, and retain their multi-generational talent. She helps corporations maximize the benefits and minimize the disruption in their transition to talent-focused new work environments. She's held senior management, strategy, and finance roles around the world, working in media, technology, and venture capital for companies such as IMG and Yahoo. She served on the board of the New York City chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners as chapter president and a member of their National President's Assembly Steering Committee. She's on the New York Advisory Board of Common Sense Media. And you can stay connected with her at her website, which I'll put in the chat. AJ?
Hey, Sophie. You're
So
there you go.
So I had a big day today.
Your book arrived?
This is an ARC copy. And in fact, I opened it in front of Laura and Mara and a couple of other people this afternoon, because it had literally, the box had just arrived. So this is like, it says advanced reading copy.
Yes.
But this is it.
So
Kinda
proud of you,
crazy.
Sophie.
Oh man, that's a lot of, that's real blood, sweat, and
There it
tears, guys.
There it is, magic. So as we do, tell us who you're writing for in that book, Empathy Works.
Well, first of all, I will say that Gena is in my book.
Yeah.
Because inclusion is very closely related to empathy. It's my target audience is 28 to 48-year-olds, because other than that, I'm not even going to try. So it is for the future generations. I try, but not in the book. So it is for probably, younger millennials or just millennials and Gen Zs who I think need, if you can hear anything, it's my dog drinking. Sorry about that.
We can't. We can't.
Yeah. It's trying to create a framework and a pathway forward, through this turbulence, and getting to a place where we actually have a real opportunity to make a difference as we start to create the next way forward, bringing empathy into it. We could have had empathy a long time ago. We're not going there. But now, because of technology has changed so many things, and we need to be working in different ways. And the only way we're really going to do it is by focusing on the human-centric side of work and bringing empathy into the workplace. So it's really about it's just about understanding each other. Really basic stuff.
One of the things I love about your book is that you talk about how empathy works in different areas of business. So not just in recruiting, retaining, motivating, managing, but you also talk about it in terms of sales. You talk about it in terms of customer experience and so forth. It really is a holistic approach to looking at how empathy works in business. And I love that about your book.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really just about understanding the people who we're dealing with, and understanding the individually as human beings. And therefore, if we need, business conditions are so much more complicated than they used to be. And in order, businesses need to lean in and be empathetic and inclusive and all these other things in order to actually meet the business needs. So I'm making it a kind of essential.
Basically, we need to get Gena's book and Sophie's book in tandem, so that that's a little package. That would be a great little gift, as a package.
Yeah, that would be.
Two books that work together. So Sophie, I know you're sharing a short bit of your introduction to your book, correct?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to let you read now from the introduction to Empathy Works, and then we'll have a short chat.
It was after dinner at the end of a multi-day conference for business owners in 2018. And I was chatting with another woman at my table, Jen, the founder and CEO of a bookkeeping and consulting firm. I simply cannot find 3 new associate level positions, Jen told me. Hiring new associates has been getting harder each year, but now my business is actually threatened by my inability to recruit the people I need. I understood her dilemma. The accounting and bookkeeping sector is one of the fields where digitalization has already been replacing many entry-level tasks and even some entire jobs. I could imagine that younger folks aware of these trends would be less likely to look for a job or even consider a career in this industry. They would have valid reason to be concerned their job might be automated away. Jen and I discussed the long-term problem and potential strategy of liaising with local colleges to connect with, pitch, and convince future graduates. However, that would not address her immediate needs. We dug deeper to look for other solutions. My company is very customer-oriented, Jen said. Account executives are on site at client locations for every meeting to review documents and input data. We have always differentiated ourselves from our competition with our personal touch. What if your consultants used video conferencing for client meetings? That would free up their time for other clients by saving the commuting to and from each location. Documents could be shared electronically and reviewed together with clients online. Questions could be asked before the associates inputs the data. It doesn't solve the hiring problem, but it would optimize your current employees' time while you look for more candidates. Jen shook her head. That won't work. Our commitment is to keeping our customers' businesses alive. And a key way we do this is through our dedicated on-site service and support. This founder is a tough cookie. She has been running her own business for more than 20 years while raising 4 kids. We had already had a lively and productive discussion 2 years before about workplace flexibility. I cared about finding a way for her company to get through this tough patch. We went back and forth again and again. I proposed more ideas, schedules, logistical arrangements, and shared resources that might ease or resolve the current issue. That won't work, Jen said. I explained that updating technologically was the future of her industry, and any tasks or jobs at risk would be absorbed in the process. Candidate reticence about obsolescence could then be put to rest. No, that won't work, she said again. Jen was adamant. After more than half an hour of proposing solutions to no avail, I was feeling desperate. She was determined to maintain her setup, which, she said, helped her clients stay in business, and that was her immutable commitment. That is when I had an epiphany. I had been empathizing with Jen and trying to fix her problem, while she was empathizing with her clients and trying to ensure their needs continue to be met. My mistake. I reframed the message. How about you position the video conferencing application as how you serve your clients? Upgrading how you service them, adopting new technology is how you help them adapt for the future and enable them to stay in business. Jen stopped. She said nothing. This time, my approach was aligned with how she saw the world and the client issues she was sensitized to. I held my breath. I might have found the message and delivery that worked. It was the same proposition that I had mentioned at the beginning of our talk. However, now I had explained it as an experience Jen's clients could benefit from, rather than as a convenient solution to deal with a staffing problem that should not affect her clients. Within 3 months, Jen hired a millennial with technical skills who helped her develop a digital strategy for the company and got upgrades to use video conferencing to service her clients much more efficiently. Shifting her approach to how she fulfills her commitment demonstrated a mindset that understands that future iterations may require altering the model, method, and means of delivery while upholding the same quality of service. We both benefited from our interaction. Personally, I learned much more about extending my empathetic understanding. I did not fully recognize until sometime afterwards that there had been a significant disconnect at the beginning of our discussion, when I did not realize how deeply Jen empathizes with her clients. Because of her dedicated attention to their issues and tapping into what they were going through, Jen interpreted my suggestions, which were geared to addressing her problems, as discordant with her strategic orientation. So long as I did not relate any potential solutions to her clients' experiences and how they would be taken care of, my words would fall on deaf ears. And they had. I could have short-circuited some frustrating moments if I'd empathized with Jen's consideration of her clients' situations and presented sooner how technology-based options would work for all parties, especially her clients. From my perspective, the positive outcomes were also the important steps Jen took to support sustainable growth for her business. Reviewing business processes with a long-term strategic perspective while staying true to her dedicated customer focus, commitments, and connections. Hiring someone with a relevant perspective and skills to develop and implement appropriate digital tools for her associates to serve her clients effectively. Integrating operational flexibility to adjust for ongoing changes in the business climate, including a smaller local talent pool. Upgrading the digital strategy and infrastructure that allows her to attract new associates who realize the company has the vision to succeed and grow. From that moment on, Jen was much better prepared for the future of work, with its interwoven emphasis on technology and talent. The future of work. What is or was the future of work? There are many definitions out there, but the key elements describe our new digitized, data-driven, interconnected, fast-revolving, globally integrated business environment. The fundamentals are significantly different from previous operating parameters, such that we need comprehensive shifts in our mindsets, methods, and operations to be adaptive and responsive enough for inherent ongoing iterations and many pivots. It is exciting, daunting, challenging. The new environment, this new era of work, expands possibilities and creates extraordinary opportunities, as well as challenges conventional means, methods, and practices. Between 1976 and 2012, the employment share of routine occupations decreased from 60% to 40%, while non-routine occupations, including projects of different sizes, increasing teamwork in changing combinations and varying objectives and timeframes, experience significant growth. The content, form, and format of much work is different as well. We are doing more knowledge than machine work, exercising more collaborative human ingenuity, supported by algorithmic processes than oversight of brute machine force. The future of work, our new work environment, is also human-centric. A tectonic shift has been happening as technology stops defining our lives and starts putting people as consumers and workers front and center. Technology now provides us with cutting-edge services and tools that enable us to choose how we want to live and work. A linchpin moment happened in our personal lives in 2009, when the developer platform of the early iPhones opened up and third-party applications exploded. With powerful mobile computers in hand, we could now access an extraordinary array of options: entertainment events, retail experiences, healthcare support, travel opportunities, weather information, and much more besides. As customers, we were empowered. We started demanding more customized communications rather than blanket advertising, delivering generic messages. New technologies provided sophisticated means to synthesize intelligence gathering from wide-ranging activities to identify and reach us individually as consumers and businesses. We began to want and expect highly targeted channels to find us, know us, and serve us each tailored offerings. For us as employees, the impact of technology has also been significant, with a plethora of tools enhancing our capacities and capabilities, facilitating sales, improving marketing reach, gathering data, streamlining project management, adapting operations, and much more. Human resources technologies have been proliferating with increasingly sophisticated applications and customized services for workers, such as personalized benefits options. Moreover, with dramatic effect on our working dynamics, processes, and experiences, machines no longer dictate where and when we must be at work. There are individualizable alternatives. Technology has empowered and is no longer tethering talent. As leaders and managers, are we surprised employees are echoing our customers' demands, looking for more customized communications, personalized services, individualized accommodations? As consumers, customers, and co-workers, we have been yearning and pushing to experience more of the benefits that technology affords us. Wait, what? Who is ready for empowered and untethered talent? Confined to the office or locked down at home, it was mentally manageable, but let loose and liberated? What now? We know ourselves and how far we might go. Yet we are also aware of our own marketplace demands that our own marketplace demands have raised the bar outside and in for the businesses we work for. But do we know what our customers really want? We need to connect with, serve, and respond to our customers better and faster. To do that, we need our employees to step up their game. But how is that done? How can we discover what our employees need to lean in and engage, to embrace new business parameters and solve new problems? And to do that, do we need to meet their new demands? Empathy is the skill that enables us to understand and relate to each other, customers and employees alike, in outreach to prospects to connect with their pain points, relationships with customers to strengthen bonds and open up sharing conversations, innovation and product development to elevate user-centric design thinking, leadership roles to motivate, guide, and support each direct report to do their best work, employee exchanges to listen, learn, and facilitate productive teamwork, operational functions to engage employees to be responsive to conditions and each other, vendor and partner discussions to ensure alignment and flexibility along the supply chain, and consistent and effective people-focused interactions throughout our business ecosystem. As the first emphasis of your business, Empathy works in powerful ways to help you connect with buyers. Empathy works to align, integrate, and maximize the efforts of your extended talent pool oriented towards achievement of your business goal. With empathy, you cultivate a strong, cohesive culture that it can uphold your business and workers going forward. And
Yay! Sophie, that's just the beginning of the introduction. I'm so proud of you, Sophie, because I know you have been working on this topic for so long and it is dear to your heart and you know the power of it. And the book is jammed with stories and research and also really helpful explanations about practical application and understanding how it works. It's a remarkable book, and Laura will continue to put a link in the chat if you'd like to pre-order it today. Sophie, I'm really proud of you. Thank you for sharing. What I will ask the same question I asked of Gena. What is the change you hope to see in the world? Because this book is in it.
I'm absolutely passionate about changing the workplace to make it more empathetic. I think we have an opportunity now where we're sort of thrown out of how we have been doing things. And never mind the pandemic. I mean, it's just time. We really, really need this. And we need to be working much more closely together. And without more understanding, that's going to be really hard. So I'm really, really want this to help change people's workplaces, because most of the time I do talk to people, amazing people like Gena, who, you know, gets it. She's like there, she's with me or whatever, and she's saying amazing things. I interviewed her for my podcast, and then I talk to other people sometimes and I'm like, wow, I forget how terrible people's bosses can be. I mean, like, there are some truly terrible bosses out there, and I want to try and stop some of them being quite that awful.
Yeah, I love that you're just very blunt about it. I want to stop people's terrible bosses from being awful. I think that's yes. I hope we see that change as well. So I want to actually bring the two of you together to have a little bit of a conversation about work and how these books help and so forth. I'm wondering, you know, what when you're thinking about work, do you see any major shifts on the horizon in the workplace? It could be something you're talking about in your book or something that you haven't yet talked about. What do you see in the near future coming our way? And let me start with you, Sophie, and then we'll go to Gena.
Well, there's was really, really interesting for me was writing the book last year, because this huge shift happened. And it was the realization, particularly in this country, which is where it is really needed, the great resignation is happening. So many people suddenly went, wait, what? I can actually enjoy my life. I can configure my life differently. I don't have to be, working these ways which are just horrific, and working every weekend and all the rest of it. So that shift has been happening, and now what it is making employers do. So the employees have been waking up. Now the employers are having to make the changes that are necessary, which include inclusion, which include, in addition to George Floyd's murder and everything that was a wind that was coming through. Now we have these epiphanies that people call it epiphany quitting, and they're actually changing how they're thinking about work. And it really, that momentum is able to change a lot of things. So it's a huge change.
I can see how empathy works would be a really useful tool in helping manage some of that epiphany quitting, or maybe getting in front of it. Goodness gracious. Gena, what do you want to share in this part of the conversation about what you see on the horizon for the workplace?
Happy to. So today, right before this, I was in a meeting with other people, a group of us, 6 people, who are planning something we call the Leading Edge Conference for the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, that will be coming up later this year. And this is the question that we were tackling. And basically what we're saying is that those, traditionally have a hierarchy. The people at the top run things and they make all the rules and say how things will be, and everybody else just toes the line. And because of the pandemic and people's lives being disrupted, because of people realizing, wait a minute, isn't there more to life than this? What's happening is things are starting to get a little bit up, twisted the other way, which is going to work to the advantage of workers. So a lot of worker advocacy, where people are asking for what they want, and I don't mean just willy-nilly, because I don't think that's the answer either. But people are leaving their jobs not because they want more money as the primary driver, although of course they would take more money. People are sort of running away from bad managers. So the other thing we talked a lot about as a trend is we about this whole notion of how the way that we talk about managers and leaders in this country and maybe in the world has to change. We can't keep giving them all the power and everybody else is just chopped liver or whatever the expression is. So there's that. And then another thing that we're seeing is that because you've got women who were disproportionately negatively impacted by the pandemic, especially if they were caregivers and parents, what we're finding with that is that women are going to be redefining the future of work. Because what women, and I don't mean that in a gender, like this is not a conversation about equity or pitting men against women. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the reality that when you have a large chunk of the population that has all of these obligations plus work, they need to have support, and organizations are going to have to provide it in new ways.
Well,
And I think one of the things that also goes together with all of that is that this is going to be very messy. Like there's so much that is changing because of technology and with the pandemic, but it's mostly driven by technology and all these changes, and employees kind of go, oh my God, I mean, maybe I can do work differently. And employers doing like, how do we do this? It is going to be so messy. Because also you'll have, hybrid models are challenging. So there will be the sort of recalcitrant piece, the managers go, no, you see, it isn't working. We've got to go backwards. And the other people will be going, no, it's going to go forwards. And it's going to be all over the place. If you're in an organization that is getting it, I do see that they're going to be sort of winners and losers and a whole bunch of mess in between. It's going to be challenging. So for people in large organizations, it's going to be very disruptive because it's going to be, some people get it, some people don't get it. It's going to be unevenly distributed. So therefore having empathy for each other and being inclusive are all the more important. There you go. Everything ends up with empathy and inclusion as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think sometimes people would look at a book about leading inclusion and empathy works and think this is a nice idea and we should probably do this, and let's put this on the list. But what you both are describing is a moral imperative that will drive sustainable growth, a moral imperative that will drive sustainable growth. So it's not just a nice idea or something to check off. It's actually the thing you need to do if you want to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of survive, because yes. Oh.
No, I was just gonna say, and I think if you read the news, it's the thing that we all know we want as humans. We would prefer if we could go to the workplace, do our jobs, work with our whoever, and just get along in ways that when we leave at the end of the day, we're not just exhausted about the relationship part of life, right? We would like the relationship part of life to be easier. I think we all want that.
Yeah, fair.
And I think it's going to be very hard for companies that don't do that to hire young people. And that is the great thing in all of this, honestly, because they are the ones who are absolutely saying, if you're not going to try and nurture me and try and include me and try and include my friends and whatever, I'm not interested. And that will, in addition to, everything that we've just been through, will catalyze more people to be taking the action they need to. So it's going to be necessary.
Well, I'm just thrilled because your books, both of your books, will help people navigate this transition. And your books are absolutely necessary on this journey. So again, everybody, you can pre-order their books, which I really hope you do. I also encourage you to go get on their mailing lists and so forth, so you can hear about the cool things they have planned. to keep talking about these issues around their book launches and, of course, going forward. Gena and Sophie, it's such a privilege. What I love best is when I see authors who start with just an idea and start kicking it around and writing little drafts and scribbles. And now here you are, publishing this year, 2022 Pub Club. And this is my great joy in life, is to see this.
And let me just say, there are a couple of people here that I know I invited, but there are some that I didn't, that came and are very supportive, and it's just great. But I want to let everybody know, writing a book is hard. And if I didn't have AJ and Laura in the top 3 and coming to the sprints and watching other people model the way, I don't even know if I would do it, because it's hard. It's it's hard to do, but you get the ideas come out when you sort of see these same faces, like on this call, how we write the notes to one another and chat and all that. That's part of the tradition. That's part of the culture.
It is part of our culture.
And just, I have been through hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in last year. And that's where my book got read, because I had times that I knew I was accountable. I wanted to show up, and that made me keep writing. At times, then the ball is like careering down the mountain. You're like, and so you have to run after it. But until that point,
well, we couldn't be more proud of both of you, and we're so proud to have you in our community. And we hope that everybody here will support them going forward as they get these books out into the world. So thank you so much for supporting everybody for Monday Night Reading. We do this the first Monday of the month. And we love showcasing nonfiction authors as they deserve to be showcased. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you in a month.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.